If you've ever looked at someone you love and thought, maybe I'm imagining it, this story is for you. Before we start, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because what I found out about my pilot husband didn't just break my heart. It exposed a whole system he was using to erase me. My name is Danielle Rosen, and for 11 years I was married to Captain Mark Hale. Mark was one of those men who could charm a gate agent into moving mountains and make strangers feel like old friends in 10 seconds. People think being married to a pilot is glamorous. Uniforms, travel perks, stories from the sky. What they don't tell you is that sometimes you're not married to a man. You're married to a schedule. And if that man is dishonest, the schedule becomes camouflage. Mark and I built our life in Dallas near DFW because base life was easier. We bought a little brick house, argued over paint swatches, and promised we'd use the porch swing more. I managed operations for a regional healthcare network, deadlines, budgets, real consequences. Mark lived in a world of gates and time zones, where everything could be explained away by delays, diversions, and crew changes. Over time, I learned that a uniform can make people assume integrity. It can also make people ignore the woman standing next to it. At first, the red flags weren't red. They were beige. A shower the moment he got home because airports are disgusting. A new cologne because the crew lounge smells like coffee and regret. His phone always face down, always within reach. When I asked questions, he answered fast, smooth, and confident, like a man who knew that certainty sounds like truth. The first time my instincts really woke up was the night he came home looking too fresh. Not exhausted. Not wrung out by 3 days of flying. He kissed my cheek and said, "You should have seen the sunset over Phoenix." Phoenix. He'd told me his overnight was Salt Lake City. I blinked, and he didn't even flinch. "Diversion," he said. "Mechanical. Whole thing was a mess." He spoke like the final authority on reality, so I swallowed my doubt like I swallowed everything else. 2 weeks later, I found a hotel bar charge in Tampa. Mark hadn't mentioned Tampa in months, but when I texted him casual, playful, he replied instantly, "Quick overnight." Last-minute schedule change. Last minute became his favorite phrase. It covered every gap, every missing detail, every reason I felt guilty for asking. Then came the FaceTime that didn't happen. He promised to call at 7 p.m., and I plated leftovers like we were eating together. 7 came and went. When he called an hour later, his voice was too loud, and there was club music behind him. "Crew dinner," he said. I asked lightly, "With a DJ?" He laughed. "Live band." And I said, "Sure," because being the cool pilot wife felt safer than being the wife who demanded proof. The first real crack came from a woman named Carla, another pilot spouse in our circle. She called and sounded like she'd been carrying a stone in her chest. "Danielle, I saw something on Instagram," she said. A flight attendant posted in Miami. In the reflection of a window, I swear I saw Mark, and his hand was on her waist. Carla sent a screenshot. It wasn't clear, not technically. But I recognized the watch I bought him for our 10th anniversary, and I recognized the way he held a woman when he thought no one was watching. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I opened my notes app and started a list: dates, charges, cities, patterns. If I was wrong, I wanted to know. And if I was right, I wanted to win quietly and cleanly, in a way he couldn't charm his way out of. I had managed crises at work. I knew what happens when you panic too early. You lose control of the timeline. When Mark came home next, he kissed me like nothing had changed. I studied him like he was a stranger who knew my address. "Good trip?" I asked. "Easy," he said. "Boring." I smiled. "Which cities?" He shrugged. "Chicago, Nashville." "That kind of thing?" He said Nashville with the confidence of a man who didn't realize I'd already seen Tampa in our bank account. He fell asleep in 10 minutes. That night, I slipped out of bed and took his iPad from the kitchen counter. It wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. He'd trained me to trust him. I opened his email and found a folder labeled Receipts. Inside were hotel confirmations and restaurant emails. And in the subject lines, I saw her name, Tessa. My chest tightened as I opened a Miami hotel confirmation. 2 guests. King bed. Reservation name, Mark Hale. The note said anniversary surprise for Tessa. Anniversary. Not ours. The date matched a night he told me he was stuck in Newark with weather. I searched Tessa and found a flood. Loyalty program emails, dining confirmations, ride shares. And there was a forwarded message from someone at the airline titled, Confidential Conduct Reminder, with an attachment about standards of conduct and fraternization. That's when I understood. Mark wasn't just cheating. He was cheating in a way that could end his career. And he was confident enough to keep receipts. I called Carla the next day. Has Eric said anything about Mark? I asked because her husband flew with mine sometimes. Carla hesitated, then said quietly there was a complaint months ago. Something about Mark being inappropriate with a crew member. It didn't go anywhere. My stomach turned. So this wasn't new. It was a pattern. Then I checked my credit score. It was lower than it should have been. Not a little. A lot. I pulled a full report and felt the world tilt. Accounts I didn't recognize, a line of credit, a store card, a personal loan. And an address update. Miami. My name, Danielle Rosen, was now tied to an apartment in Miami. I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my face in the mirror like maybe my reflection could explain how a marriage turns into an identity crime. I placed a fraud alert. I froze my credit. I called the bank about the loan. The representative said the application was submitted online, e-signed, and the funds were transferred to an account ending in 4412. Mark's secondary account, the one I only knew about because years ago I'd helped him set up autopay. Something in me didn't shatter. It clicked. Like a lock turning. I wasn't dealing with a mistake. I was dealing with a strategy. That same night, I went deeper than credit. I pulled our life insurance policy from the file cabinet, one of those boring adult documents you only touch when you renew it. Mark had always said, "Don't worry, you're covered." But when I logged into the insurer's portal, my stomach dropped again. The beneficiary information had been edited 3 months earlier. My name was still there, but the percentage had been reduced, and a second person had been added with a new email address I didn't recognize. I copied the email address into a search bar and saw a familiar pattern, a string of numbers, then a name. Tessa. My hands went cold. It wasn't just hotel overnights and sweet texts. Mark had started reshaping the legal edges of my life like I was furniture he could rearrange. I printed the beneficiary page, dated it, and slid it into my growing folder. No drama, just proof. Then I checked another boring adult thing. Our home title documents and the county portal. Nothing had changed yet, but I saw Mark had requested copies of the deed weeks earlier. Requested copies. Like he was preparing. Like he was staging the exit while I was staging dinner plates. That's when the full picture finally formed. Mark wasn't having an affair. Mark was running a parallel life, and he was trying to fund it and protect it by quietly unhooking me from everything that made me safe. That night, Mark came home with grocery store lilies and a smile. For the best wife in the world. I took them, thanked him, and watched him relax. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing his cover. And that's when I stopped playing wife and started building a case. First, I protected myself. I opened a new bank account in my name only. I redirected my paycheck. I changed every password. I copied every financial document. I photographed everything. I saved it to a cloud account he didn't know existed. Second, I filed a police report for identity theft. The officer slid me the report number and said, "Usually it's strangers." I said, "Not this time." Third, I learned who Tessa was. I found her Instagram easily. Tessa Grant. 28. Flight attendant. Beaches, hotel mirrors, crew life highlights. Then I saw my anniversary watch on her wrist in one photo. The caption, "When your man makes you feel safe." My stomach flipped. I screenshotted everything, not to be petty because receipts are protection. I called the airline ethics line, carefully, as a spouse asking about process. I asked how identity theft involving an employee is handled. I asked about captain flight attendant fraternization. The voice on the line got cautious and said, "If there are prior complaints, it's taken seriously." Prior complaints. That phrase started to feel like a lever. I messaged Tessa from a new email, direct and simple. "If you think you're the only woman, you're not. If you want proof, reply." She replied in minutes, "Who is this? Are you trying to ruin him?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard and I typed the truth. "I'm trying to survive him." We met in public near Love Field. Tessa walked in looking polished and nervous, like she'd practiced her bravery in a mirror. I stood calm. "Tessa?" She stared at me and whispered, "Danielle?" Hearing my name from her mouth felt wrong, like she was trying on my life. I didn't insult her. I didn't beg for sympathy. I slid my phone across the table mark in my kitchen, date stamped by our home camera. "I'm his wife," I said. "We're not estranged. We're not roommates. He sleeps next to me." Tessa went pale. "He told me you were unstable," she said. "That you'd hurt yourself if he left." My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "He told you that so you wouldn't question why he couldn't be official with you?" Tessa stared at her latte like it could hold her up. "He said he loved me," she whispered. I leaned in just enough for her to hear the certainty. "He loves control." I showed her the hotel email, anniversary surprise for Tessa. She whispered, "That was our date." I watched her fantasy collapse in real time, and I felt something unexpected, not triumph, not joy, just clarity. Because Mark didn't just betray me. He recruited her into the betrayal, then built her a lie to live inside. I asked the question that mattered. "Has he used your money?" Tessa swallowed and nodded. "He asked me to put a deposit down once. Said his per diem was delayed. Did he pay you back?" She looked down. "He said he would." There it was. He wasn't just cheating. He was harvesting. Tessa's hands were shaking, and I realized she was scared of him too, just in a different way. "He gets cold," she whispered. "Like he can turn it off." I nodded because I knew that switch. "That's why we don't warn him," I said. "We don't give him time to write a script." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling, then stopped on a thread and turned the screen toward me. Mark's texts were a perfect performance. Good morning messages timed like clockwork, jealousy disguised as concern, and the same soft threats hidden under pet names. "Don't talk to anyone about us," he'd written once. "People are looking for reasons to be mad at me." "He told me you were mean," Tessa said, voice small. "That you were the kind of woman who'd destroy him if you didn't get your way." I held her gaze. "No," I said. "I'm the kind of woman who documents him when he commits felonies." The words made her blink, like reality was finally louder than romance. Then she said something that made me sit straighter. "He uses a companion pass," she said. "He told me it was his like a benefit. He booked a ticket for me once under the name D. Rosen and said it was how the system works." I didn't think. She stopped, horrified. "Danielle, that's you." My throat tightened. "That's fraud," I said. "And it ties you to it if we don't get ahead of it." Tessa nodded rapidly, tears threatening. "Tell me what to do," she whispered. And in that moment I knew Mark's favorite trick, making women feel responsible for his behavior, was about to backfire on him. "I have a police report," I said. "If you cooperate, it protects you. And it ends him." Tessa's eyes glistened. I don't want to be the reason he loses his job. I replied softly, he's the reason. You're just the mirror. After a long silence, she nodded. Okay, I'll send everything. That night, Mark called from a layover like nothing had changed. Miss you, he said. I stared at the ceiling fan and lied, miss you too. Then my phone buzzed with a link from Tessa, screenshots of weeks of messages. And one line made my skin go cold. Don't worry about HR. I've got someone in compliance. They owe me. Compliance. I knew exactly who worked in airline compliance. My cousin Jonah Feldman. I called him immediately. Jonah answered cheerful, then went silent when I said, Mark is my husband. His voice turned careful. Danielle, I can't discuss internal matters. I whispered, how bad is it? Jonah exhaled. There have been concerns. Multiple. But he keeps it clean enough that it never sticks. I asked about the someone in compliance claim. Jonah scoffed. He's bluffing to intimidate people. Then Jonah said the sentence that turned my plan into a countdown. The airline is one formal complaint away from grounding him pending investigation if there's documentation, especially with a pattern. One complaint away. Mark didn't fear heartbreak. He feared consequences. So I built my next steps around consequences. I assembled a case file with a timeline, charges, dates, cities, screenshots, the police report, the bank tracing, the conduct reminder. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Fact. I drafted a report that read like an incident log, because systems respond to evidence more than they respond to tears. Then I handled the part Mark thought he controlled, the narrative. He had a family that adored him, friends who thought he was the golden husband, a social circle that treated his uniform like moral proof. If I confronted him privately, he'd cry, apologize, promise therapy, and then tell everyone I was spiraling. So I prepared to publish my truth quietly, with receipts. I wrote a short email to Mark's mother, his sister Carla, and 2 couple friends. 3 paragraphs. No insults. Just, Mark has been unfaithful. He used my identity to open credit accounts. Police report filed. I am sharing this to prevent a false narrative. I attached the police report number and 1 hotel confirmation that said anniversary surprise for Tessa. 1 screenshot enough to be undeniable, not enough to look obsessive. I didn't send it yet. I waited for the right moment. I wanted the timing to match his confidence, so he couldn't sprint ahead and rewrite the story before my truth landed. Saturday night, Mark took me to a white tablecloth restaurant in Uptown. Candlelight. Wine. His best performance. Halfway through, he reached for my hand and said, I know my schedule's been hard, but I'm committed to us. I squeezed his hand and asked lightly, tell me about Tessa. His smile stayed a beat too long. Tessa? He echoed. Tessa Grant, I said, flight attendant. His eyes flicked around the room like he was searching for the nearest exit. What are you talking about? He said, soft and dangerous. I leaned in. Don't gaslight me. Not tonight. Not in public. Not when I've been polite enough to let you eat your steak. His mask slipped. You went through my email? He hissed. Not I'm sorry. Not I messed up. His first reaction was outrage that I'd seen him. Interesting, I said. That's your first concern. Mark's jaw tightened. You have no right, I have every right, I said. Because you opened credit in my name. His face went gray for half a second. Then he tried to recover. That's insane. I slid the police report number across the table. Mark stared at it like it was a weapon. You called the police, he whispered. Yes, I said calmly. I did. Mark leaned forward, voice low. You don't understand what you're doing. Oh, Mark, I replied softly. I understand exactly what I'm doing. That's why you're scared. He tried to bargain. We can fix this. We can, I said. You can't fix something you built to break me. His eyes flashed. You're going to ruin my career. I sipped my water. You ruined your career. I just stopped covering for you. Then he whispered, You have no idea what I'm capable of. I looked him in the eyes and said, Neither did I. That's why I'm done. I stood, left cash for my half, and walked out. He grabbed my wrist hard. The server glanced over. I smiled at the server and said, We're fine. Then I looked at Mark and whispered, Let go. He released me, but his eyes were ice. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a notification from our shared account. Mark had just tried to change the password. Right there. Mid-restaurant. Like he could lock me out of the truth the second I stood up. I laughed under my breath because it was so perfectly him. Control as reflex. In the driver's seat, I reset every shared password from my phone one after another, like cutting wires on a bomb. Banking, utilities, the home security login, the streaming accounts, even the airline partner points he loved to brag about. I didn't do it to be petty. I did it to keep him from rewriting reality behind my back. Then I checked my email and saw a new message from the insurer. Beneficiary change request received. Time-stamped 15 minutes earlier. My fingers went numb. He was doing it again, moving pieces while I was still breathing in the parking lot. I took a screenshot of the timestamp, attached it to my file, and whispered, No more. Because if he wanted to turn my life into a transaction, then I was going to audit him. In my car, I opened the email draft and hit send. My phone lit up immediately. Texts, calls, shock, disbelief. Mark's world was collapsing while he was still sitting at the table pretending he had control. I drove home slow and steady, and for the first time in months, I felt my lungs fill like they belonged to me. Before Mark could get home, I moved money legally my share into my new account, removed his access to autopay, and printed the separation agreement my attorney had prepared. I didn't destroy his things. I didn't do anything messy. I arranged the paper like a meeting agenda, because that's what it was. A meeting where his performance no longer mattered. When he slammed through the door, he was furious. What the hell did you do? He snapped. I sat on the couch and gestured to the chair across from me. He stared like he didn't recognize me. He ranted about humiliation, about his family, about what people would think. I waited until his voice burned itself out and then held up the folder. Your lawyer might want to see this, I said. What is that? He demanded. A timeline, I answered. Receipts, credit reports, the police report, messages from Tessa, and your contact reminder email. His face drained. You're bluffing. I opened the folder and slid out the bank tracing page. He stared at the account number like it was proof of a crime scene because it was. Mark's anger flickered into panic. Danielle, please. Don't take the only thing I've worked for. That word please sounded foreign from him. I said you took the only thing I worked for, my security, my identity. He tried to shift blame. This job messes with your head. I got lonely. I made mistakes. I didn't react. He stepped closer. We can start over. I looked up. Tell me her real story. He froze. What, Tessa? I said. What did you promise her? He swallowed. Nothing. I pulled up an email on my phone showing a draft addressed to airline ethics, HR, and compliance. I didn't send it. I just let him see it. Mark's throat bobbed. Danielle, don't. Tell me, I repeated. His shoulders sagged. I told her we'd be together once the divorce was final. He rushed to add, it didn't mean anything. It meant you were willing to destroy 2 women's lives to keep yours comfortable, I said. Then Mark said the quiet part out loud. Do you understand what a scandal like this does? I'll be grounded. I'll lose seniority. I'll lose everything. Yes, I replied. Now you know how I felt. His phone buzzed on the counter, Tessa's name flashing. Mark, who is Danielle? Are you married? He grabbed the phone like it burned. He looked at me and whispered, "You contacted her." I nodded. He hissed, "You're insane." I smiled faintly. "I'm efficient." I handed him the separation agreement. "Pack a bag," I said. "Tonight. You leave. Tomorrow you sign." He scoffed, but his voice wavered. "I'm not signing." "Then I file the report," I replied. "You already filed," he said. "Not with the airline," I corrected. His face collapsed into something like fear. He walked to the bedroom, and I heard drawers open, zippers, the small, furious sounds of a man realizing his power was conditional. When he left, he didn't slam the door. He closed it softly, like he finally understood he was the guest, not the owner. The next morning, I submitted my report to the airline with documentation. Police report, bank tracing, receipts, and screenshots that showed the relationship. I wrote it like an incident report because I knew exactly how corporate systems read. Then I waited. No posts. No rant. No public meltdown. I let evidence do what evidence does when you finally hand it to the right people. 2 days later, Mark called. His voice was smaller. "They grounded me," he said. "Pending investigation?" I asked. "Yes," he whispered. "They took my badge. I can't report for duty." I said, "Okay." He sounded offended. "That's it? Okay?" He kept talking fast, like speed could undo reality. "I called the union rep," he blurted. "They said I should have never let this get outside the marriage. They said spouses get emotional and companies overreact." I let him ramble until he ran out of oxygen, then I said, "Mark, the company didn't ground you because I'm emotional. They grounded you because you used my name to move money and you used my identity inside their travel systems." He went quiet. "Are you saying about the companion pass?" he asked, suddenly small. "Yes," I said. "The ticket booked under D. Rosen. If you weren't so busy writing scripts, you'd remember your scripts leave footprints." He exhaled shakily. "It was just one ticket. I was going to fix it." "You fixed nothing," I replied. "You layered lies on top of each other until they became structural." Mark's voice sharpened again, trying for authority. "You don't understand aviation. You don't understand seniority. They can take my schedule, my routes, my future. Do you get that?" I looked at my kitchen window, at the porch swing we never used, and felt the calm settle deeper. "I understand consequences," I said. "That's literally my job. You just never thought consequences would land on you." He whispered, "Tell them you were angry. Tell them you exaggerated." I laughed once. "They asked for account numbers, Mark. You can't charm an audit." Then he said, "Tessa left me. Not remorse. Not apology. Just consequence." "And," he added, voice cracking, "she's talking to the airline too." There it was. Mark didn't just have a spouse complaint anymore. He had an employee complaint too. And that is what companies fear, a pattern inside their own house. A few days later, airline HR called me. They couldn't share details, but they asked for additional documentation and told me to document any contact from Mark. The word they used was surreal, unsafe. Hearing authority validate what I'd been living under quietly made my spine straighten. The next morning, Mark tried to get in front of it. My attorney called me and said, "He filed something overnight in emergency motion claiming you're unstable and trying to harm his career." I actually laughed, because of course he did. When men like Mark lose the facts, they attack the woman's mind. Priya's voice was calm. "We're responding with the police report, the bank tracing, and the insurer screenshot. He's not getting an emergency order, but document everything." An hour later, Mark called from a blocked number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway, voice syrupy. "Danny, please. You're not thinking clearly. You're going to regret this." Then his tone snapped cold at the end. "Stop talking to people. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Priya. Then I did the most satisfying thing. I emailed it to myself with the subject line threat timestamped. Because Mark's biggest weakness was that he believed his tone could replace evidence. Later that week, airline investigators scheduled a formal phone interview. They didn't ask how I felt. They asked what I could prove. They asked for dates. They asked for account numbers. They asked for the name under which the companion pass booking was made. When I said D. Rosen, there was a pause on the line, the kind that happens when a professional realizes this just crossed into a different category. After the interview, I sat at my kitchen table and let myself cry for the first time. Not because I missed Mark, but because I finally understood how much work it takes to be believed, even when the truth is sitting in your hands. Mark's attorney tried to frame the fraud as a marital misunderstanding. My attorney, Priya, called it exactly what it was: intimidation. "We have the police report," she said. "We have bank tracing. He's trying to scare you into silence." I told her, "Good. Let him try." Because intimidation only works when you're afraid of the dark. And I'd already turned on the lights. Weeks later, I went to a holiday party alone. Mark and I usually attended together. Conversations paused when I walked in, not with judgment but with recognition. For the first time, people saw me as separate from him. Carla hugged me and whispered, "You look different." I said, "I feel different." Mark's sister found me outside under the porch light. She looked uncomfortable, like humility didn't fit. "Danielle," she said stiffly, "Mark told us you were spiraling. That you were trying to sabotage him." I nodded. "Of course he did." Then she asked quietly, "Is the fraud true?" I met her eyes. She swallowed hard. "He used you." I replied yes. And for the first time, she didn't defend him. She just stood there, swallowing the shame of enabling him. That was social death. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just the slow, irreversible collapse of the story he told about himself. My cousin Jonah called later with a careful voice. He couldn't give details, but he said they're not treating it like a domestic issue. There are other complainants. Other complainants? That sentence made me nauseous, not surprised. It meant I wasn't the only one, just the one who finally refused to be quiet. It also meant Mark had been protected by silence for a long time, and the silence was ending. The divorce took months because men like Mark don't let go easily. He tried charm, then threats, then pity. None of it worked. Evidence doesn't care about tone. It cares about numbers, signatures, and transfers. In mediation, Mark looked at me like he'd finally met the real version of me. "You really did it," he said quietly. "Yes," I answered. "I really did." He whispered, "You took everything." I smiled faintly. "No. I took back what you stole. There's a difference. The settlement protected me from the debts he created and secured the house I paid into while he used my identity to fund his secret life. The criminal side was between Mark and the state. The career side was between Mark and his airline. And the social side, the part he valued most, had already decided. Months later, I sat on the porch swing we swore we'd use more, watching the Texas sunset bleed into the neighborhood rooftops. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one plating leftovers at 7 p.m. like love could be scheduled. I didn't hate her. I felt protective of her. Because she survived long enough to become me. Here's what I learned. A man who cheats isn't always chasing pleasure. Sometimes he's chasing permission to erase you, to spend your life like currency, to keep his image while you pay the cost. But when you stop covering for him, when you stop being the quiet accomplice to your own betrayal, his whole world loses altitude. And if you're listening to this and your stomach is tightening because something feels off, hear me. You don't need a perfect smoking gun to start protecting yourself. You can save documents. You can open your own account. You can write down dates. You can trust your pattern recognition. The moment you stop begging for reassurance and start collecting reality, the fog lifts. And once the fog lifts, the lie can't breathe. That's when you realize you weren't weak. You were waiting. My name is Danielle, and this was the last straw. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.